oh, you don't understand my vision. Well, neither does your target audience. So you don't have to have the answer, boss. You already hired people who have the answers.
Right.
You just have to listen. They focus on hiring friends instead of qualified people. The highlight reel never shows the years and months when nobody cared. People don't buy things they don't understand. At the beginning, I would show up and nobody would show up.
90% of the startups fail, and most of them had even funding. So what's the silent killer that's killing the majority of them? Welcome back to the conversation with Florid. My guest today has spent over 20 years watching founders build, struggle, pivot, and sometimes crash. He has the honest take on entrepreneurship that I have came across in a very long time. He's the founder of Founders Academy, a free community-driven space he built to support the early stage entrepreneurship all for free. This is the kind of support that never was there ever before. He believes that most businesses don't fail because of a bad idea or lack of funding. They fail because of bad leadership, weak strategy, or fundamental confusion between being busy versus doing things. Adam McNeill is not here to tell you what you want to hear, but he's here what you really need to hear. This one is going to hit different. Let's get into it. Adam.
Hi, Florid.
Let's start with the hard truth of entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Being on social media as an entrepreneur looks very glamorous.
Absolutely.
And everyone wants to be that entrepreneur with thousands of followers, showing their fancy lifestyle. Mm-hmm. But I want to know what's the most ugliest thing about it, and how majority of them are misunderstood.
Yeah.
In this entire entrepreneur world.
I'm going to back this up with, the experience of a number of conversations, speaking to entrepreneurs who are all saying the same thing, which reinforced to me that I wasn't just feeling it myself, right? This is a common thing that people feel. It's certainly not for everyone, and it can be very lonely work making decisions with incomplete information. Right. A lot of the time. If people weren't entrepreneurs their entire lives, if they were sort of moving into entrepreneurship from more traditional roles, I would say forget all of the expectations that corporate life may have set for you, or you're gonna find yourself in shock, right? It's similar to what I had a really big night at my weekly talk at Founder Academy the other night. We had 17 people, and that was the most we'd ever had. And it was sort of a lot of balls to juggle, and pieces moving, and people to respond to, and hands to recognize. And I was feeling the pain a little bit, as excited as I was. But at the beginning, I would show up and nobody would show up. That didn't happen too many times. It happened 2 or 3 times. But okay, it's just I got to keep working at this and so on.
Sure.
And eventually, a really core group started to show up, and they saw value and they believed in it. And the value further came from their contributions and their experience and their stories. So it can take time to get that wind in the sails that you're looking for, and to feel like something is actually working. The highlight reel never shows the years and months when nobody cared. I think it's lonely for a lot of people because a lot of people are starting alone, right?
Yes.
Or even in entrepreneurial situations or startup situations, you bring people on board who are handling certain pieces of things. So you can still be all alone on the piece that you've been asked to handle, right? Until you can always phone a friend, you can always do things like that, and I certainly recommend people do that. But when you're small, and especially if you're a solopreneur, the work is going to feel lonely for a while, and you're trying to generate interest. You're trying to build an audience, and it's not just going to be there right away. It takes work. It takes time.
Absolutely. The statistics are brutal, and majority of them don't make it, even in their first quarter. Mm-hmm. What, in your opinion, is the most or majority of the silent killer for all of those entrepreneurs that doesn't make where they have visioned earlier?
Okay. I would say, to encapsulate everything, not learning enough from more experienced entrepreneurs. I feel I've seen a lot of startups fail because they spend too much time and energy either solving the wrong problem, or they forget about the problem that they were trying to solve in the first place. And they, invest too much maybe in tools or technology even, or they invest too heavily in listening to the wrong people. They forget what they were originally trying to do. They stop listening to their target audience. These things become muddled, and therefore everything that they do thereafter becomes non-strategic.
Right. Can you explain more about, or if you can give an examples of about it, like when they starts with one problem and when they grow, they are not focusing on the same problem rather than focusing on the other things which are not important or which is not something serving people.
Yes. There is a tendency among founders themselves to become a little bit self-obsessed in the work that they're doing. Okay, they may have a vision where they want to go, or oh, look at this cool thing we can build now. It could be the greatest thing in the entire world. If nobody needs it and nobody wants it, it doesn't matter. You're going to fail.
Absolutely.
Because there's no solution market fit there.
Right. Yeah. Is it always about the idea, or is it something else entirely?
I certainly have, things I want to go to with this. I've also seen startups fail because they don't focus on the right priorities, in my opinion. They focus on hiring friends instead of qualified people. Egos get prioritized instead of target audiences and users. So and often, if they're actually trying to move strategically, those strategies I find, they don't fail because they're bad strategies. They fail because they're poorly executed, or again, priorities are wrong. It's, if the message isn't landing with the target audience,
right,
a lot of people will come to the conclusion, oh, well, we're just not there yet, when in fact it's just fundamentally broken, right? The messaging is just broken. And you should be embracing a philosophy of trying to figure that out quickly and getting it right quickly and learning what doesn't work quickly, as opposed to saying, just stick with it here. It'll all, there's going to be a tipping point eventually, and everything will click. That's magic beans.
Absolutely. You just hit the nail in the head. And that brings me my second obvious question. How do we tackle those situations or those moments where they need to realize that, hey, you need to stop focusing on this aspect of your business and more focus on the core part of your business, which is the purpose,
right?
Why you started initially?
I mean, the answer to that question kind of comes down to the organization of the organization. Right. If it's sort of one person who is basically king of the organization, and people are maybe free to offer different opinions or suggestions or point out things that are wrong. If that one person doesn't want to listen, this is typically what we call founder syndrome. If they don't want to listen to their own people inside, and we see this happening with large corporations. I don't believe for a second that our oligarchy of telecoms in Canada are actually listening to what people on the phones have to say about their customers' problems. And I think if they did, they would do a much better job. But it's, those people are down there. We're having real up here important people conversations in a boardroom, and they don't possibly have anything of value that they could tell us, right? Yes. So there's an element of willful blindness. It's a very human problem. Founder syndrome happens when ego takes over and people in the room aren't being listened to, even though they might have very valuable things to say, and they get dismissed. Oh, you don't understand my vision. Well, neither does your target audience. So,
right.
I've seen that far too often. And, anyway.
Sure. How do you define founder syndrome?
I think it's where founders become victims to their own thinking. Again, like I said, a lot of it can come down to ego.
Yes.
And they stop forgetting about the problem they were trying to solve, and especially the people they were trying to solve it for. And that's how you end up with features that nobody asked for and nobody used. And oh man, well, that was a lot of dev time well spent, right?
Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely. You earlier mentioned that business or entrepreneurship is not for everyone.
No.
So what are those people it's for? Or how do you find yourself that, hey, entrepreneurship is something my jam, or it's not for me?
I think a lot of people gravitate to entrepreneurship for the wrong reasons because of misunderstandings. I think a lot of them figure out that it's not for them right away. It requires a certain openness, and it requires a bottomless amount of curiosity. Okay, it requires a dogged determination to stay focused on the problem, not our solutions. Counterpoint: I have worked in corporate environments where, whether or not people were afraid to put up their hand and say, hey, this isn't working, and I've spoken to all of these clients, and this is what they're telling me, and we need to be paying attention to that. Either they're afraid to do that, or they're reluctant to do that, and they say, hey, this is just a job. I'm just taking a paycheck. I'm not the owner. Not my problem, right? And I disagree with that. Even if all you are is an employee. I don't mean all you are is an employee, but if you're an employee, you don't own the company, you don't have a stake in the company. I still think that it's very important that that employees learn to think and act entrepreneurially and embrace the values of an entrepreneur, because only then can they truly be disruptive within that organization that is employing them. And I've actually seen this teaching students and getting them placed and so on. A lot of companies valued that kind of training, that kind of thinking, and were aware that the old way of being an employee was, just show up, cash in or punch in, cash out, take the paycheck and run. Not really my problem. That was leaving a lot of good ideas on the table. The best leaders, business leaders, entrepreneurs, maybe entrepreneurs who've grown a company and now have employees, they realize that they cannot thrive in an echo chamber. They need to be surrounded by people who are willing to put real, true things on the table. Willing to put up their hand and saying, I don't think this makes sense. This is what I'm seeing, and this is what. But anyway, the other point of that is that the leader of that team needs to be receptive to that, and they need to recognize that and not be threatened by that. And so, if they are that kind of person that can't tolerate divergent opinions and can't listen to anybody but themselves, or feels threatened when somebody has a different idea or maybe a better idea.
Sure.
I've seen that too. If they get, allergic to that situation and they feel like they're losing control somehow, you're in the wrong game. Nobody can do it alone.
Absolutely.
You've got to be surrounded by people who aren't afraid to speak up, and you have to want those people to speak up earnestly.
Right. Being as an employee and not holding any company's stakes.
Sure.
For an example, how do you find those employees who are more focused or more prone towards providing a value to a company rather than, as you mentioned earlier, just working for the paycheck?
Right. Hiring managers and HR are going to hate this answer. Find the people who were working somewhere else that knew the value that they were bringing.
Yes.
And got tired of being ignored and got pissed off and left. Find those people. And they left, and I'm sure they were labeled troublemakers, right? Troublemakers. Didn't agree with everything the boss said. There's a ton of value in that.
Absolutely, because now you are giving all those people a purpose.
Sure.
With pride. And of course, the paycheck is by default.
And everybody wants to be recognized, but
Sure.
it's not a very contentious idea, I don't think, in and of itself, to say that, okay, there's a situation and you're bringing your background and your experience and your skills and your vision or your desire, your picture of what success looks like. And I'm bringing a different version of that. And we're both looking at this thing in the middle and we're seeing different sides of it, aren't we?
Sure.
And maybe we're both right.
Yes.
But we still have to be able to appreciate what each other is seeing and be able to have honest conversations about that.
Agreed.
Otherwise, something is broken, and that's where unnecessary risk comes in.
Absolutely. I was talking with a lady here in London, Ontario, and she mentioned the same thing. Having diversity in your team is very important.
It is.
For an example, you graduated from the university and you have a friend who graduated with the same university with you, will have majority of the time the same mindset and the same direction to move forward.
Right.
But when you bring in the different person from a different background or different region,
Yes.
will have a different perspective on the same things.
Yes.
And that will going to bring more value
Yes.
than having your friends
Yes.
working for you.
Yes.
Nothing's wrong with that.
Sometimes
still-
there is. There definitely can be, because if that you've integrated a whole separate layer of politics there. Has that person actually earned the right to be in those conversations?
Sure.
Or was it just handed to them?
Right.
And then what impact does that have upon them psychologically? And what is that experience that flows from that like for everybody else?
Right.
And if people see enough of that and say, okay, that's what's valued here, I think life's a little too long already. I'm gonna find the exit door, right? But again, it's really important for leadership to embrace that. I remember the first time that I felt like I was working for a true leader, and it's very much this. I was working in an agency. It was a small digital agency. It was my first role as a junior digital strategist, and the agency got their first legal client, like a law firm. Hadn't had any law firm clients to date, and nobody on the team had any kind of experience working in that industry vertical before. So we were gonna get everybody together in the boardroom and figure out, like, what do we know about this new industry? Because when you're an agency, you tend to focus on the same, we really get the construction guys, right? Or we get the real estate. We understand the real estate business, and so we know how to talk to those people, right? And law is a whole different thing. And those people can be very pointed and very, very regimented about who they are, what they do, and what has worked and what is not for them.
Sure.
And so anyway, as it came about, the only one with any experience in the room was our brand new intern, who had, until she became our intern in the agency, she had worked summers for several years previously in her father's law office. And it was at that point, the boss was like, thank goodness, here you go, talk. We're all going to tell us everything you know, and we're going to fervently take notes here, right?
Yes.
We're gonna get right into it. We want to know, please tell us everything you know. So the person who was sort of at the bottom of the organizational hierarchy had the most experience. And so it was a real leader to me who recognized in that moment, it said, no, you should be leading this conversation, because I'm not gonna fall victim to the Dunning-Kruger effect. I have to believe that I'm smart enough to know what I'm not smart enough about right now, right?
It's really important.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
And that I was a new employee as well too. I'd started only 2 weeks before that. And that was a big signal to me, a big positive signal. I was like, okay, I'm in a place that actually respects value and isn't egotistical about where it's coming from.
It's very important, being as an employee, to have that trust in the company and the company vision and the culture that they have.
Yes. I think it's important for leadership to embody that kind of ethos, so that I've worked for corporate as well. I worked for some people who secretly were terrified all day And they felt like they had to have the answers to all the things, right?
Yes.
All the problems, and they had to have the answer. And they were very quick to jump to a conclusion. It's like, okay, you have hired videographers, you have hired SEO people, you've hired digital marketers, you've hired email marketers, you've hired graphic designers. Why not ask them what they think the best course of action is in whatever situation? You've hired a bunch of really talented, skilled people who have opinions, experientially driven opinions on the things that they do, and you're treating them like wrenches. You don't have to have the answer, boss. You already hired people who have the answers.
Right.
You just have to listen.
Yes.
You just have to be open. I've watched a lot of founders come up with their own kind of body of language that they fall in love with around whatever it is that they're doing. Okay. I was just a couple of years ago, I was working for a not-for-profit that were absolutely doing some innovative things, and they were building some cool things, but they were trying to get everybody else to use their language instead of working with because everyone's coming to these conversations with a different frame of reference. So you're an LMS, you're a learning management system, which fundamentally it was. No, it's totally different. It's a network of networks and all of that. And I could just see people I don't know what you're talking about anymore. I'm looking for an LMS. Do you have one or don't you? Oh, no. We don't use that word. It's so clarity problems are created, I believe. They can be deciphered. They can be understood. Bottom line, people don't buy things they don't understand, right? And I've seen that messaging before. Oh, well, if we keep saying the same thing loud enough and long enough, eventually it'll catch fire, right? Very, very rarely. Very, very rarely. It's always easier to go to somebody else's party than it is to try to get them to come to yours.
Yes.
I think additionally, a lot of founders come from, especially in the digital space, they come from very technical backgrounds, and they get very focused on the technical stuff. They start talking about features right away instead of talking about like customer pain and how they can help take that away. They should lead with the benefit, and you can only do that once you've fully understood, the journey of the person you're trying to sell to. Only then can you empathize with their pain. Only then can your message resonate with their journey to find an end to that pain. And it's often the best conversations, the most strategic conversations in that regard. They don't start with technical language. If I'm putting on my marketing hat, I would say that's not top of funnel language. That's like mid funnel to bottom language. You can have those conversations later on. They're not curious enough yet. They're trying to separate signal from noise. They're trying to say, these vendors I think can help us, and these ones, they're doing something else, or I'm not really sure what they're doing. So pass.
Right.
I think people will always, a student of mine said this, former student of mine, sorry. She's now a professional and she's an entrepreneur as well. She said the other night, and it warmed my heart because I've said this to my students all the time. I said, people may not remember everything you said in that half-hour long pitch, right? But they'll probably remember how you made them feel.
Absolutely.
And if they feel like you get their challenges, then you can work with that. Then there's some place to grow from there.
Sure.
But if you don't establish that right off the bat, I think you're dead in the water, because people just don't have the time. They will not continue to try and understand what you're talking about to figure out if it can help them.
You mentioned they have a clarity problem. How do they find clarity? Or how do you boil it down in terms of as an entrepreneur who have started a lot of businesses, may have failed or may not, but they are still having those clarity problems. The business are booming, even though apart from this, but they still have the clarity problem or lacks at the clarity.
I would love to say there was a really fancy answer to this. Like, the answer is super boring. In my opinion, it's very boring. If you're not achieving clarity, you're not talking to enough people. Okay. And that can be your customers or your potential customers. I'm involved in an exercise about that right now, trying to figure out, trying to figure out from target audience members, where would you price this thing? What would you actually pay, right? Because again, you could have the greatest product in the world, but you need to sell it for a certain dollar amount in order to be profitable. If your target audience isn't willing to pay that much, again, it could be the greatest idea in the world. It's not going to take off. It's not going to be successful. So yeah, I think it's talking to people. You have to talk to each other. You have to go out and find, you can't create something successful in a bubble or in an echo chamber. Although I've seen a lot of people try. I was working for that not-for-profit. I was using their LMS as part of the courses that we were designing and carrying out. I was an instructor and I was a course designer. And I had to say, we're teaching a lot of things here. We're teaching these young people a lot of things, including agile project management, agile product development, right? Which is all about making sure that everything you do is working towards serving the needs of that target audience. And I had to sort of put up my hand a few times. I said, you have people in my classrooms using this thing you've made every single day. Why aren't you interested in talking to them? Why aren't you interested in asking them about their experience? And I kind of had to bang on that drum for a couple of years. And then finally it was okay. I was given a couple of juniors to organize some usability study stuff and record the findings. And a lot of them didn't surprise me. A lot of them were saying like, well, what's with all this weird terminology? I don't understand what that means. This is confusing. Oh, there's just been a new release. And now there's this whole layer of features also with kind of mystery meat names for things. Well, I don't really get that. This is just confusing. And again, I would go back to the decision makers. Has anybody asked for this? Right? First off, has anybody asked for this? Is there a need case? And have you asked them what their experience is as a user so far, what they change, where they find frictions, where they find difficulty, and where they're getting lost. Also, just like where they're not having fun. It doesn't have to be like, not everything every tool we use has to be, really fun or whatever. But if it's a pain in the ass, if it's just, if it's frustrating to use, that's not good. And if that's what your users are feeling, and you're not asking them about what they're feeling, well, that's on you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's how majority of them fails.
I've seen enough of it, and I've heard from enough other colleagues that I have to believe it. And absolutely stubborn. And again, we're teaching these young people to focus on their audience, to listen to their audience. We're teaching them how to run usability studies. We haven't done any of that for 2 years. We should be more on top of that than anybody, arguably. We should be the biggest advocates of that. We are not drinking our own Kool-Aid, right?
Absolutely.
And we're saying to other people, don't do as we do what we say. And that's bad for brand trust. I don't think anybody respects that.
In this digital world where so many startups are digital, they have either a website, a mobile application, or some sort of digital aspect of it, where you are not meeting your customers directly, nor through a franchisee or not through any face-to-face module. How do we get the feedback? And I have seen this application's prompting to share a feedback, and majority of them are negligent about it. They say, next time, not now.
Right.
How do you still get those feedback?
So, I mean, in the example in the career example that I just listed, I actually found that as soon as the audience was a little unique. The audience were people, many of them, these were, they'd come out of college, had kind of realized that, whoa, it's really competitive out here. I need an edge. And I'm not sure college really prepared me all that well for this.
Yeah.
Right. But they were UX designers, right? They were people like that. They were project managers. They were product developers. They wanted to do things like that, and they were actually excited to help out with those things. So it was maybe a little easier in that situation. As soon as I was given the green light, okay, bring people in, and we'll write you a nice letter of reference saying how you participated in a usability study that helped us make the product better. I had to cut it off. I had more people than I needed. I had to say, okay, well, I can't take you all out of class all at once. That wouldn't be very good, So just a few at a time, and thank you for your enthusiasm. But it actually wasn't difficult to get those people. They were, and I guess it did surprise me a little, they were very enthusiastic about giving feedback about what they were doing, what they were using, how they thought it could be better. They wanted to be a part of the conversation. I don't know if that's true for all users or customers. I mean, a year and a half ago, I had an absolutely nightmarish experience with Rogers Communications. It was costly as well. And I could write a book on it as to how to fail customers at every step of the way. Absolutely every step of the way. If Rogers wanted to talk to me about that experience, I would make the time. And I would tell them all the ways they could go through that horrible experience, something like 60 different customer touch points, all of which were failures.
Wow.
And I would say, there is something for you to learn here. And I'm happy to take the time to explain it to you. So
That's
far,
huge.
my phone hasn't rung. I'm just saying. They don't care. They're not interested. And that's the problem.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are very analog, traditional ways of doing this. When I was a student at Western, I was looking for different ways to make money. And London has long been a market research town, has been for decades. And so I met someone who introduced me to someone who was in charge of running focus groups for the area breweries. And they were running these groups in pubs, and they had fun games, and they were putting free food and beer on the table, but they wanted people's opinions on things. And they put us in groups, and they gave us easels with markers and stuff. And I remember it being a pretty fun time. And marketing was one thing I was thinking of going into with my media degree. So I wanted to see how these things worked in action. But, fundamentally, for what these breweries are spending on a yearly basis, asking a bar for some space, paying for some food and drinks, and having a capable person in charge of facilitating that experience in order to extract the insights that would be of the greatest value, they did not consider that an expensive initiative. It was only valuable. And they wanted those insights. There are other ways of doing this. There are a lot of people who send around surveys and so on. I got a little bit of a problem with surveys. I think as soon as you're relying on surveys to get your feedback, you're immediately starting with like an audience subset that doesn't mind responding to surveys, and that isn't everybody.
Right.
And it can be a very inhuman thing. I've been given plenty of surveys myself, and I can tell that it's from somebody who's at a certain level within the organization and has maybe never been an actual user or been a customer. And I will go through the questions and I will say, well, that's not quite the right question. And my answer, and especially if it's multiple choice, I'm like, well, my answer that I think is valuable here, there's no space to fit it into the rigid framework of this thing you've given me for feedback. So especially in usability studies, I noticed this too. It's got to be a balancing act, because if you only ask the questions that you think you should be asking, then you're not giving the respondent or the user or whoever it is, you're not giving them the flexibility to tell you what they think should be on your radar. So it has to be a little bit of both. And if you don't give them the flexibility to do it, unless they say, hey, hold on, where are you going? Come back. I got some more stuff to say, which most people won't do, right? Then they're walking away with insights about your product or service that are never going to land on your radar because you haven't given them the space to respond to it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You even touched on the point how you can enhance your survey patterns. One of the things that worked for me, that I'm teaching at Fanshawe College. I was struggling with this, getting the feedback out from the students in order for me to have an opportunity to improve for the further semester.
Sure.
One of the things that really worked out for me is humanizing me as a professor.
Yeah.
And discussing the things that I have been doing throughout the week.
Yeah.
I meet them once a week and I was discussing whatever the work I have done in my previous week, along with the personal
Yes.
moments that I enjoyed or I spent with my fiance or whatever little projects that I've been working on, speaking engagements. That really worked out well. Students started sharing their own journeys, that what they have been doing. They were working on assignments. They went out. And at the end of the semester, everyone was so open about their feedback. And it was such a great semester. And the thing that really worked out for me, and I'm really thinking forward into implementing in one of the entrepreneur journey of mine as well, making it more humanizing.
I agree.
And then that just makes people feel that, hey, this is not just another app.
Yeah.
This is just like us, one of us.
Yeah. And I think it helps. I used to teach here as well too. And I taught, I'd walk in my leather jacket and my jeans and, rock band t-shirt, whatever, because that's who I am. And I didn't look like a teacher. Actually, I sat at the very first day of class. I actually sit among the students. They think I'm a lot younger than I am.
Me neither.
And I just sat and I listen to what they're talking about. And once I get the feeling that everybody's starting wondering, is the instructor going to show up? And then I'll just walk to the front. And they're like, oh, he was here the whole time. I said, hey, I introduced myself. But I think what I noticed as well is that there are, and this is in many ways a diversity question, there are different cultural perspectives on that, and different cultural experiences that people are bringing. So if you've never had a teacher like you or me, and suddenly that teacher is asking for feedback, some students who have been in a situation that's very rigid, like you sit there and you take notes and you listen, and then I want you to regurgitate everything I said back at me at the end of the year, and then I'm going to judge you. Right. And they're used to that. And so you suddenly ask them to be open and they feel like they're being entrapped. They're like, is this a trick? Like, is this person? And you have to really convince them, no, I actually want to know. And that's because, and you said you share your own entrepreneurial journey, your stories, the things that you've observed in your career, whether or not they were under your roof or under somebody else's. And you explain why getting that kind of feedback is so critical to success. And then you say, it's just as critical here. It's no different. So I have learned that that's valuable out there, and I want it to be valuable in here as well. I also put my students on teams. I don't know if that's commonly done, but at the very beginning of the semester, I put them on teams, and every exercise they would be working through as a collaborative unit, right? As a collaborative unit, and they'd have a capstone project where they've got to come up with some kind of solution, some kind of business, and they have to sell it. Right? They have to sell it. And I think for a lot of, in a lot of college classrooms, maybe the selling of it is your final presentation, and that's kind of where it ends, right? I didn't do that. And I didn't ask for permission to do it either, what I did. But I said, no, you need to go out and get some feedback. You need to justify your thinking here. You need to justify your planning. Again, if you want to develop something you think's really cool and nobody else cares, that's a big problem. If you want to develop something that you want to sell and nobody else is willing to pay for it, what you need to sell it for, the price point you need to sell it at, you've got a problem. And their questions are the same. Well, how are we going to do that? You got a hallways and hallways and hallways full of people out there. Go out, talk to people, film the whole thing if you can get people on film. And they thought, they're first years too, right? They're like, oh man, we're so shy. And we're in a new place. Nobody's gonna want to talk to us. No, they all found out very quickly they were wrong. And they got really excited about that process and really excited about supporting things and then realizing, oh, okay, we're pivoting, not because, not because one of us woke up in the middle of the night with a brilliant brainstorm, but because somebody in the hallway said something to us that we would never have thought of, right?
Yes.
And that's where innovation comes from, and that's where disruption comes from. And then you're pivoting based on things that are data informed. They're connected to something real. They're connected to a user experience or a customer experience. Yeah.
Amazing. How did you get into entrepreneurship? Were you like this always, or?
I think so, but I didn't really think I was. Like, I didn't think I was an entrepreneur. I realized when I was in high school, a lot of my friends were, working at McDonald's or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I started, hijacking my family's lawnmower and going out and cutting grass, right? And I got a few buddies to join me, and then I started to realize, oh, okay, so this neighbor, we do a good job, and suddenly we're out there, and the next door neighbor's coming over, tapping on our shoulder, hey, like, how much to do my lawn? And we would get 6, 7, 8 lawns lined up in a row on the same street. Well, that's cutting down on travel time. We're making more money faster, right? And I was living at home. I had no expenses. That was, in many ways, maybe some of the best money I've ever made. I had no bills. I had no rent, right? But I realized, I said, yeah, I would much rather earn this kind of money being outside with, my headphones on, Walkman, cassette, right?
Yes.
My headphones on in the sun, getting some air, getting some exercise, getting in shape, going to look good when I go back. I'm never going to be the biggest guy in the room, but I can maybe, I won't be overweight, because I've been pushing a thing all summer. And I like that. And then that sort of grew into my career. And I realized very, very quickly in my career, especially at my first managerial role, at least by then, but before then, I realized, okay, there's emergent stuff happening in my industry. There are exciting things happening, but I'm not getting the opportunity 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, to work on those things. And a big one was search engine optimization. I've done a lot of work in that regard for a lot of Canadian clients. I was the guy that the BDC account managers pulled in. It wasn't even my project. They just wanted me to handle the search engine part, right? Which was great because I was watching whiteboard videos by Rand Fishkin and of Moz, right? And Matt Cutts of Google, who were really, in front of a board with markers, just kind of explaining how this stuff worked, which was fascinating to me because agencies at the time were afraid to sell it. We don't really understand this. We don't know how to package it. We don't know how to price it. It all feels very weird. But I was getting into it and I was learning. I said, anybody can do this. It's going to become a big driver. It's going to become a big business driver. So that first agency, they didn't really prioritize that. But I was finding clients outside of that. I always had at least one client outside of my day job. And it wasn't because I needed more money. It wasn't because I couldn't pay the bills on my day job, but it was because, and it wasn't just any client either. It was a client is aware that this SEO thing is happening, for example, and they want to talk to somebody who is starting to figure out how it works and what's going on. And so by doing that, and it wasn't always SEO, sometimes it was different things, right? But in doing that, first of all, I was keeping myself relevant. And suddenly everybody started hiring SEO people. Well, I had things in a portfolio that I could point to saying, I've been doing this work for a couple of years, and yes, I do understand it. And I can help you understand it too, to create a new offering for your agency, right? So I wasn't really thinking entrepreneurially, to answer your question at the time. I was really looking for a company that would recognize my value and would just let me stay forever, continuing to crush problems for them. It turned out they weren't really out there. But in doing that work, trying to keep myself fresh, trying to get my hands dirty with the new things that were happening, and it's a little bit like gambling. I'm not a gambling man, but sometimes, you got to say, I think this is going to matter. It doesn't matter to enough people yet, but I think it's going to matter to more people soon. To the point where I was actually working in one agency and they were doing some gray hats, black hat stuff for their clients in terms of driving traffic that wasn't legitimately earned. And Google was saying, this party is going to come to an end. We're going to put it to an end very, very soon. So this is your warning. And they actually warned people for about a year and a half that the black hat stuff was going to get heavily penalized. So I managed to get my boss, who had become very, very successful doing that stuff, thinking about it a different way, thinking more reliable, slow-term growth, and saying, look, an axe is coming down. And then one day it did. And all of his competition, who'd been doing things the same way and hadn't been listening to guys like Matt Cutts at Google or Rand Fishkin at Moz, they disappeared from the search engine results completely. My boss was a pretty big fan of me that day, right? He was a pretty big fan of me that day. And that's kind of what I mean about thinking and acting entrepreneurially inside an organization. And in doing that, I caught the bug for that. I said, why am I working for these other people, right? I can do this. I can sell this stuff and do these projects myself. I've been doing it, right? I've just been doing it casually, one project at a time, not too much, because I've got a day job. But ultimately it led to that. And I had a couple of just really tragic corporate Fortune 500 experiences after, 5 interviews of pretending they wanted to know everything that I wanted to know. And, it'd be great if you could help us, help us take action and understand the landscape, more like the small, nimble startups that are starting to take pieces away from our market share. But then as soon as I got there, it was corporate o'clock. Well, we've never done it that way. Okay, all right. I lasted about 6 months in each of those corporations and managed to get myself fired because I was just not going to compromise. I'm like, you got a place here that's full of doing things the standard way and never putting up their hands, never saying anything, never telling their bosses what they know, perceiving the disconnect between what the bosses are saying and what the customers are saying. People in the middle noticing that it's not connecting, but not saying anything. And there's a reason for that. Either you've hired people that just won't say anything, or you have told them that speaking up isn't allowed, right? And so I saw a lot of that. And that second one was kind of really kind of soul crushing. It was really, really too bad. And they didn't handle it very well at all. But, when they sat down and told me, we don't think you're a good fit here, it was actually the highest compliment they could have paid me. And what they wanted to do, and I'll tell you what they wanted to do. This is, and anybody who wants to Google this, you'll figure out who it was. This is the largest independently owned staffing services company in Toronto. Okay, so they're like an HR company, like Deloitte, best managed companies, all this stuff. So what they wanted to do, and they're fielding people, they're putting contractors in roles all the time, right? And what they wanted to do was build an app so that all these contractors could track and declare their expenses. There were travel expenses, meal expenses, stuff like that. And I said, well, there's already a lot of apps for that. Okay, well, we want one with our brand on it. Okay, it's your money, that's fine, right? I said, Adam, we want you to bring in some of the agency people that you've worked with, because that's what we think we need here. And we want to bring them in and have them quote on this job. So I put together a good old corporate RFP, right? Request for proposal. And I sent it to some handpicked people that I respected and admired. And I had nurtured professional relationships with them for years in some cases, right? And so that went out and the proposals came in. And then my corporate overlords brought me into a little room and they said, okay, so there's actually a second phase to this project. And we want the app to integrate with our very, very legacy accounting software. I said, okay, well, I need to send out an addendum to the RFP so that they know. No, we don't want them to know about this, was the answer. And I said, first of all, well, why not? And the answer I got was, well, you've obviously never worked in a Fortune 500 company before. I said, well, I wasn't keeping that a secret, but my problem here is you're setting me up in front of people, my personal connections that I respect and care about, and I care about I care about maintaining those relationships. You're setting me up to look either like someone who doesn't know how these projects are supposed to be managed, or someone who is willing to keep them in the dark because you say so for reasons unexplained. And I said, I'm unwilling to do either. I won't do that. I've been here for 6 terrifying months wondering why you hired me. And I'm not gonna I'm not going to look like I'm manipulating or selling out my personal network. That's not my job. It was not in the job description. So I won't do that. And it was like, well, do it or we're going to decide you're not a good fit here. I said, all right. Thank you. Thank you. You're right. I'm not. You're right. So to tie that up, I think a lot of people have very glamorous reels and stories about their entrepreneurial journey and what inspired them and what motivated them and what made them finally get the courage to go for it. And I think that there's another story that a lot of people don't talk about, and it's mostly characterized by frustration and disgust and saying, no, I'm not going to waste my career doing stupid work. And I'm not going to let you sell me out. Your values are clearly not in line with my own. I'm out. I'm going to find people that do value what I'm about and are sick of dealing with what you're all about, actually. So unfortunately, my entrepreneurial journey, when I finally went all in and I met the right people right away, I very quickly became a strategic consultant for the clients of the BDC here in Canada, right? And all of the things that I was getting pushback from in corporate, well, we've never done it that way, right? And I wasn't coming up with crazy ideas. These were just industry best practices that everybody was talking about, and they just didn't want to do it. But as soon as I was a freelance consultant and these people were paying for those opinions, turned around completely. Suddenly they were, these clients, whoever I was answering to, much more receptive to hearing what I thought, even if it wasn't their idea, right? So it was good. There was a couple of months there where I was really pissed off, right? I was like, oh, I tried to bring value to these guys, try to help them fix all their broken stuff, and they don't even want to hear it. Like, it really kind of drags you down. But then very quickly, I realized as an entrepreneur that the dynamic was different. The conversations were different. The perceived value was different, even though I was actually still bringing the same value or trying to bring the same value. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So yeah, a story that sort of began where I stopped being an employee and became an entrepreneur, became a freelance consultant, began with that frustration and that disgust and that sadness and anger. It did, but then it very quickly turned into something else, and I'm glad that it did because I didn't want to stay in that place. It's not a productive place to be. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's one of the entrepreneurship character. They don't stay where they don't see the value.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So what these guys did, and I still have the piece of paper, these guys, I got pulled into a room by HR and I tried to explain, I said, no, these guys want me to sell out my network. That's not my job. They want me to keep my own network in the dark about a project that they're asking me to bid on. It's unprofessional.
Yes.
It's immoral. And it's not setting me up for success, either in the now or in the long term in my career when I'm no longer working here. And I'm definitely thinking about that time, right? Definitely thinking ahead to that right now.
I know what you're talking about.
And so they had me, the HR didn't care that I was, there were even so many worse things than that about the place. Like there was a guy on the roof of the neighboring building, kind of looked like your typical developer, like, bit heavy, like his jeans were kind of falling off. You could see his butt crack a little bit, right? And he had a cardigan sweater on, but this guy was having the worst day of his life on the roof of that building. And he was crying and he was putting his head in his hands and he was constantly answering his phone and yelling and crying and screaming, like super upset. And he was sitting his butt down on the edge of the roof of that building, 17 floors from the street. And I could see him straight over my monitor. And I was worried about that guy. VP of sales came through on the floor. This is a floor where about 180 people are working, and tried getting everybody to chant, jump, jump, jump. Not that this guy was going to hear us outside, but still gross, right? And then the VP of ops came in like 2 minutes later, didn't know the first guy had done it, tried to make the same joke. And you see these nervous employees, the same ones that are afraid to put up their hands in any meeting and say, I think what you're talking about is wrong, right? Just nervous laughter, right? They're going to sit there and take the paycheck. I didn't. I phoned it in to the Toronto PD. I described the situation. I described the man. I said, I'm worried about this guy. I think he needs some help. So the PD didn't tell me that they were going to come up into my building. They did ask where I worked. But suddenly, there are these cops who are responding in full force because that's what they do when they don't totally understand the situation. I'm talking like jackboots, like face shields, submachine guns, right? And there was another team that were finding that guy in the other building, and they wanted me for a statement, and they shook my hand. They were like, "That was a great description. Like, really glad you called," and all of this. There was 180 other people on the floor saw this guy. Nobody made the call, right? And after that, I was hauled into a little room by my manager and was lectured harshly for creating a workday disruption. Okay? We have to be better than that. We have to be better than that to each other. I'll die on that hill. I will be uncompromising about this. Anybody who disagrees with me can fuck right off, because we have to be better than that to each other. We have to be better than that as organizations, and we have to promote leaders who are better than people who want to start jump chants. It broke my heart. I spent probably at least 20 minutes crying in the bathroom because I couldn't believe where I'd landed and the type of people who were in charge of me that I was answering to. And I didn't have any respect for them at that point. You know, they'd cost it one piece at a time. But at that point, I just thought, what kind of place is this? Right? And so finally, when I refused to manipulate my network over the app situation, and they said, "We don't really think you're a fit here," I couldn't have agreed more. And I was still angry, frustrated, all of that, disgusted. But allow me to be the first to say I'm not a fit here.
Caleb Creations is the sponsor of this video. So if you are looking for your custom merchandises, either mugs, t-shirts, or any kind of custom merchandise for your own business, please reach them out. I'll put the links in the description for both the sponsors of this video.
When they finally let me go, they made me sign a piece of paper saying I would never tell anybody else the rotten things I saw them do. That's great. Oh, well done, HR. Where were you when the rotten things were happening? And now you just want to muzzle me and not. And so I signed it, but it was contingent upon me getting a written reference and me getting a phone call explaining what no longer a fit meant, even though I pretty much knew it. I was basically daring them to say it out loud, right? Never received that reference, never received that phone call. Piece of paper I signed isn't worth the paper it's written on. So I don't care if anyone finds out can figure out who I'm talking about here.
A lot of founders think that they're getting this government grant or the VC funding, the venture capital funding.
Sure.
They're heavily funded, but they still crash. What do you think is the reason behind that? Money is not a problem here.
Yeah.
I'm sure the idea is great, because that's the reason that VC and government has funded those startups.
Hopefully.
What else could be the reason apart from idea?
Yeah, this goes back to a little bit of not knowing what you don't know. A lot of founders for sure feel like, oh, if I just get my hands on this chunk of funding, all my problems will magically disappear. Funding amplifies what's already true. It amplifies what's already there. If it's bad leadership, if it's bad leadership decisions, if it's a negative workplace culture that drives top talent for the door constantly, these things are going to become more true. If these organizations, these startups, whatever the case may be, if they do not have the humility to recognize these problems and find within themselves an earnest desire to solve those problems before the funding kicks in, those problems are going to get bigger. It's kind of my answer. And those problems will continue to get bigger, and they become a cancer. The things that were holding back the organization before are still holding the organization back. They're just holding it back more expensively, and we're not solving the right problems still. Right? We're not talking to the right people still. when in fact those were the things that were holding them back all along. A lot of people think, oh, there, I just got all this funding. That means everything I've been doing is right. Probably not.
Right. So how do a founder make a strategy that actually works with or without funding? And how do they ensure the idea that they have is still gonna work?
Strategy and goals are inextricable. Whenever I get nervous, whenever people start talking about strategies, that, okay, well, how does this connect to organizational goals? How does this connect to the objectives of the business? Because if it doesn't, it's probably something that should be put in the parking lot, right? It's probably something, we'll revisit that later to see, but there's no obvious way that it fits into what we're doing right now. And a big way I've seen that take shape. I've been in rooms with senior level VPs of marketing that don't understand the difference between strategy and tactics. Okay, because strategy is what connects the tactics to your goal. I've been in a lot of conversations where, we just want to, let's just start with driving traffic with some Google ads and see if that helps, right? Like I've been having this conversation it's like Groundhog Day, over and over again for years, right? Years. And I will say, well, it was especially true at the BDC too. I would say, well, you're driving traffic to a site or a landing page that is terrible, or it's not been designed to convert. First, make sure that where you're sending people, it's designed to convert, or, a lot of the time people get their strategy wires crossed too. So a number of BDC clients that I worked with, there was this confusion. Oh, well, we tried Google ads, but that doesn't work for us. Okay, well, can I see the historical data? I would say, and I would look at it and I would say, the ads drove tons of traffic. They did their job. Mr. Client, what does that mean? And they didn't know. It means that your website's terrible, or it means that you're pointing traffic to the wrong place. There were no shortage of cases in my career where somebody couldn't figure out why their paid traffic wasn't converting for them. I would say, well, you've got an ad here, an ad campaign for hot stone massage, whatever, in your day spa, right? Did a lot of day spa work for some reason. And people are clicking on that ad and you're sending them to the homepage of your website. Why are you doing that? Oh, well, I want them to see all the other services we offer too. They don't care about that right now. Like, they have clicked on that ad. That indicates a really high degree of intent. They're ready to pull out their wallet and make a buying decision. And then you've gone and confused them. You've gone and distracted them, and they land on a page. Oh, I don't immediately see what I was just looking at. I'm going to go back and click the next one in the list. And that's how it works. So a lot of problems that people thought were big problems, it was like, you have actually in some cases, they had decent pages to send that traffic to. They just weren't doing it. Okay, let's change a bunch of URLs, right? Don't make it a mystery. I've seen clothing companies do this too. A really beautiful ad, nice bright red down-filled winter jacket, and I land on the homepage. There's not even a picture of the jacket, right? It's like, oh, they're basically saying, hey, screw you, you find it, right? They're not connecting the dots for the customer. They're not making it easy. And in fact, they're injecting a totally unneeded layer of friction in the customer journey. And that's how I wish more people would think about strategy, right? Your customer has a need, make it as easy as possible for them to end that journey and find a solution. And in some cases, it was really, really obvious. Like, some people when people really know what they're doing, it's very, very obvious. The highest cost per click I ever saw, and this was the last time I was checking, it was a couple of years ago. It was connected to the search phrase divorce lawyers Los Angeles. Okay? And there was a very, very wealthy and prestigious law firm. They were willing to spend something like $780 to get one click onto their website, bearing in mind that there's nothing stopping that user from hitting the back arrow, never to return. But they had invested in their site so much, or they've invested in their brand so much, and they understood that this audience is very nervous, is possibly frightened, right? There's a lot, it's Los Angeles, a lot of wealthy people out there. There's a lot of money up in the air, and somebody's going to end up with most of it, right? And they understood that if they could give that person on that website, as soon as they land, or the landing page, give them peace of mind, give them confidence, that if they could already make them feel, oh, I can breathe a little bit deeper now. I think this is great, right? Then that $790 click, they're going to make good on it. It's going to convert. But they have to be doing the other part of it too. You can't just expect a Google ad to be doing all the work for you, right? It doesn't stop there. The strategy has to be the entire customer journey all the way through and beyond. And I say and beyond because I've also seen too many people's strategies end at point of sale. There, we sold Florid the thing. Next, right? Whereas if you think about all kinds of industries where the buyer journey is rather unique, like let's look at the diaper industry. Okay, I've used this with students. I use this at Fanshawe College here with students. So, limited customer lifetime value, right? Kid's going to be in diapers for 2 years, right? Should we really be seeing the end of our relationship with that customer at the point of sale? Because they probably, on the off chance that they have friends, neighbors, younger siblings, younger cousins who are a few years behind them having their first kid, right? And so they become, we need to see them as potential influencers in onboarding newer customers, right? And nurture them in a way because it's always cheaper to continue nurturing a customer than to replace them or lose them. But figure out where that turns over. Stay in touch with that customer in some way, whether it's through tracking or whatever, because even when the first kid is out of diapers and they're officially no longer a customer anymore, they're in that influencer role, well, they might become a customer again if they have a second kid, right?
Sure.
And so then it all starts over again. Similarly, in real estate, I worked for a company that they build small houses, they build big houses, they do small apartments, they do big apartments, they do condos, right? And if they could build their strategy around, kids, older kids going off to school, needs his first apartment, right? And if they can stay in touch with that customer or that family all the way through every buying decision they make, kid falls in love at school, right? Gets engaged, right? They're working now. They're ready to settle down. They need a bigger apartment or they need a bigger condo. They're going to have a kid, right? Suddenly that gets too small. It's time to invest in property, right?
Sure.
And so on. And then their kids grow up and go away. Well, now it's a lot of house for us to take care of, and we're in our 50s and 60s. And honestly, we kind of miss the condo, right? And so if you understand how the needs of your customer change over time, that customer lifetime value can literally be their entire lives if you're doing a good enough job and if you are being strategically minded enough. So my point is that this can vary drastically and dramatically from customer journey to customer journey, from industry to industry, product and service to product and service. But you got to find out what makes yours unique and how you can leverage that and build strategy around it. And that's what I wish more people who are making, high-level business decisions, I wish they were thinking about things more like that. Because the technology we have makes that a lot easier. You don't have to phone them up anymore and say, hey, is Junior off to college yet? Okay, well, call us when he is. All right, right?
Absolutely. This is amazing advices. And then some really great insights into different industries. Having that relationship built over the period of time can do wonders. And that is something I personally have felt in my own business.
Good.
I had a client like 3 years back. We did a little job, closed it with just a few $1,000s. And over the period of time, started his entrepreneur journey. And now we're building his 5-figure the contract.
Awesome.
And it's great, just because we maintained the relationship over the period of time.
That's right. And that's why the don't stop at the sale.
Absolutely.
Right. The customer relationship extends well beyond that. And anybody who I mean, you Google charts of customer journeys. It's crazy how many of them end at point of sale. A lot of them don't too, but I don't understand why they all don't. They're just leaving money on the table. I don't know. I think, and again, not to pick on Canadian telecoms, but I love to. They're all about that. New customers, new customers, new customers. No, we don't take care of our existing customers. Screw them. Who cares what they think? It's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have that experience as well.
Oh, we have all had that experience. And they all get together in rooms and decide to be equally crappy so that we have no customer choice. There you, okay, you won. You've beaten us. Congratulations.
All right. Let's talk about when one or two person starts the entrepreneur journey and when they grow up. Let's say they have 50 employees under the hood now.
Right.
Yeah. What is the common mistake that they do when scaling things up?
Yeah. There's a few. But I think it all comes down to like the need to be very self-aware, to be able to look yourself in the mirror honestly. Like I've ended up working in a lot of companies that started as startups, a couple of technical guys building something, right? And suddenly it's a 300-person company. And these guys are still in charge and feel very good about being in charge. But the one question they never ask themselves is, are we good leaders? Are we good bosses? You know? Because maybe if we're not, we've got lots of money. Let's hire people who are better bosses. We can continue making decisions and acting in capacities that are best suited to us. But, you know, leave the leadership to other people because our front door is spinning, right? It's spinning on its axis and talent is leaving all the time. People don't seem to like us. Oh, well, they're all jerks. I don't know. You gotta pay attention to that. That's a real thing. So can I tell another story? All right.
Sure.
Okay. So this is sort of like my third agency job. The place I don't even think the place exists anymore. Downtown Toronto. And I have a web development background. I actually went to college for web development, not marketing. I went into the digital marketing route with that knowledge, so I was hired to be a project manager who could talk to who could speak web developer, right? And they had other project managers who didn't have that background. So I'd been brought in to manage a team of 12 developers. So I walked in first day, right? First of all, like there was a detectable panic in the entire place. Lots of conversations I couldn't quite make out, but there were loud voices having them, right? They'd completely forgotten that I was showing up as well. That's a great look. So I sat there on the couch in the room, just like listening to everything I could. And oddly enough, this is a very small world moment. My partner at the time was working about 6 blocks away in downtown Toronto at a big data startup. And she texted me, she said, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, "Well, here's the kind of morning I'm having. And I'm sort of wondering what's going on in this place." And she said, "That team that you were hired to lead, that entire team started on their first day here. Like wow. That team just joined my team. This is my partner." You have any idea how many people work in downtown Toronto? Do you have any idea how many shops there are? So what had happened was this place, as I learned, terrible culture. Nobody listened to the developers. They were overworked, underpaid, not listened to, got very tired of it. And 3 months before that, the lead dev had decided he was getting out and he got an interview at this big data startup and they hired him on the spot. But they said, "Oh, we need a few months to, put together a great team for you." And he said, "Well, you're in luck. I already have one." And they said, "Oh, that's very interesting. And are they looking for?" "Yes, we are all looking for work." In fact, these guys went out for lunch all day and complained about their bosses, right? It's pretty typical, right? But they had reason to as well, and they decided they wanted something better. So big data startup scheduled all of these guys, and they were all guys. It was about 2008, so it was very male dominated. There's a lot more women in dev now, which is great to see, but it was 12 dudes. And and they once they'd gotten everything signed, sealed, and delivered, they got up for lunch the same way they always did and went out for lunch together, and nobody noticed that they took all their personal things with them. and they didn't come back. And that's how they quit on a Friday afternoon.
Wow.
Okay. And then so it's a Monday again. And she's like, all these guys started here. And she said, they're going out for lunch as they always do. And they've invited a bunch of us to go with them. Do you want to join us? I'm still sitting in the waiting room waiting for somebody to acknowledge my existence as on my first day at the job. I said, yeah. And so I just said, hey, you guys figure out whatever's going on. I'm going out for lunch. Didn't tell them with whom, right? Of course not. And it was educational. It was educational for sure. I got to meet the team that I was not going to be leading. I'd love to know what the odds of that happenstance were. I really would. It's got to be extreme. Anyway, I came back to this place and the owner was coming in. Right? He didn't come in very often, as I learned. He wasn't working hard, wasn't his style. But he came in and he gathered all the remaining team leads and the project managers into the boardroom, and he was really angry. And he said, we have to find ways to stop other companies from stealing our people. And I looked around the room because I'm tire kicking this situation hard, right? I look around the room, a lot of people looking at their shoes, right? Nobody putting up their hand, everybody sitting on their hands. Nope. And I looked around and I said, okay, I'll bite because I want to know where the hell I've landed again, right? So I put up my hand and I get acknowledged by the boss. And I said, okay, so I just started here. I'm just a new guy, but I think if we want to have a meaningful conversation about talent retention, we should start it in reasonable terms. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, the reality is that our developers didn't go out for lunch as normal. Windowless vans didn't pull up beside them. Big guys with ski masks and chloroform didn't drag them inside these vans. They did not wake up at strange computers in a strange office and say, oh, I don't know, I guess I code here now. And that's exactly how I said it, which, was maybe a little pushy, but I was also in a state of shock, and I was absolutely trying to take the temperature of this situation. I don't want to find out that this is a waste of my time 10 months from now. I'm finding out today, right? And of course, that didn't fly very well. He hated that, even though it's the absolute truth. These people had made, each of them, a lengthy series of choices and decisions about what they were going to do in the best interests of their career and their lives, and in many cases, their families.
Sure.
Right? And their work-life balance. That's what they had done, and that's all that had happened. Nobody stole their employees. And so I think that these are things that a lot of people who graduate to leadership don't really get, especially if they didn't really earn their way there. And I'm sorry, but there's a lot of that going around. Nepo babies getting handed companies with budgets by their rich daddies. And that was exactly the case here. No, it was totally the case here. And everybody knew it. And it was against the rules to tell the truth if it wasn't the truth that the boss was saying, right? And I think that a lot of people fall victim to their own bullshit in that regard, and don't know how to get out of their own way. They create their own fires, blame everybody else for them, right? Because taking accountability is not fashionable.
Yep.
And they don't learn a damn thing. And it's tragic. And and they can have all the employee exit interviews they want. And I know I've been in places where that was like, no, just I'm just looking for something else, where they could say, you know what? I'm tired of being treated this way. I'm tired of being underpaid. I'm tired of not being listened to. So I learned a lot from those situations and watching those people make those kinds of decisions for themselves. And later on, I had to start really setting boundaries. And it got me in trouble, put me out of a job kind of thing, but they weren't boundaries I was willing to compromise. But I had to start saying things to people. I was in that second corporate job, and I had a VP. Again, I'd been brought in to explain digital marketing to them. And I had a VP who was micromanaging every piece of a project away from me, a project that I'm responsible for the success of. And I just, I had to take a breath for a minute, and I had to say to him, look, everything that you want me to do, every way that you want me to manage this project, I would never do. I would never do because of A, B, C, and in case of X, Y, and Z. I would never do it this way. And the way I'm trying to run it comes from experience that you hired me for. So you're the boss. Let's say we do it your way. Am I still responsible? Is my ass still on the hook for the success of this thing? And if you don't get a very simple, clear-cut answer, start getting your resume together. That's my advice. And that's what I learned to do. I just had to sort of recognize those situations before they got bad and leave. And again, it was shortly after that I was full-time as an entrepreneur doing really great consulting work for clients all across Canada. And, looking back, it's very validating. I'm like, okay, was it a gamble? Yes. Did I win? I think so. Did it pay off? Yeah.
Awesome.
And that comes from experience. It comes from experience and learning things the hard and painful way and learning to stick to your guns.
Right. In my life, I have always feel that learning the hard way is the most promising way to learn things, for myself at least.
Can be. I mean, it's going to come for all of us. We're all going to learn some stuff the hard way, and I think that's okay. It's okay. What are you going to do with that now? Do you need to learn the hard way 3 more times?
No.
10 more times?
No.
Right? That's the question.
Exactly.
How many times do you need to be taught this lesson?
1 time.
Hope if everyone will say that yet they want it because people want to stay with what's familiar and what's comfortable, right? Which is where that's the way we've always done it thing comes from, right? And but nothing grows in the shade, right? That's where innovation and disruption go to die. It's just you cannot be successful in a safe space.
Everyone wants to build a unicorn. What do you think is the core psychological aspect of a founder who builds a massive empire or disruptive company versus the one who are not able to make to that level?
I think it's another challenge that a lot of founders have is like the art of letting go a little bit, okay? Because they started a thing and everything was on them and they had to wear all the hats, right? And everything was their responsibility no matter what. Similar to that corporate boss who was, older, more boomer aged, and they thought they had to have the answer to every problem when they had a team of specialists who could have answered those problems more effectively if they had simply deferred to them, delegated to them, asked them what they thought. Radical idea, right? And so where that gets treacherous is you've hired good people now. You've built this big organization. You've got to get out of their way. You've got to let them help you. You've got to, and it is, I've watched a lot of founders learn that the hard way, but when they do start to learn it, they're like, oh man, this is so much less stressful. I'm actually realizing that I can trust these people that I've hired, right? I hired well. I did. I hired well, and I can trust them, and I can let go of all the responsibility and let them have some. And that is what people want too. People want, it doesn't have to be a NASDAQ type stake in the company, but they want to have control over the work. They want to have control over the product. They want to be able to, when they've moved on to a more senior role at a different company or something, they want to be able to show that and say, look, these are my fingerprints all over that thing, right? I helped make this. I helped make it a success, right? And when you don't do that, you're going to lose that talent. So I think it is, I think a number one thing is learning to let go and put away the solopreneur, get out from behind the solopreneur avatar or persona, if you will, and realize that no, teamwork actually does make the dream work, as long as you hire properly and don't just hire your frat buddies or whatever, right?
Sure.
It's a double-edged sword, and if you swing it incorrectly, it'll cut off your foot. It doesn't matter to the sword, but I see that a lot. But and again, I have seen people learn to let go, and it seems to be a personality type thing. A lot of real alpha personality types struggle with that, and the other ones that struggle with it are the ones that are constantly coming at everything from a place of fear.
We talk about high performance a lot on this show. In your opinion, in your experience, what is that one darkest entrepreneur's mindset that nobody posts about on social media?
I think it's sort of identity erosion, not necessarily identity crisis, but identity erosion, especially if you're facing like a multifaceted audiences. You're constantly trying to speak to them in their own terms, which is good. You should, but it can leave you wondering after all of it, like, who the hell am I? And I'm chasing all of these partnerships, these client relationships. I'm chasing all this money, right? And I think the darkest part is, losing track of yourself in all of that, and especially losing track of your values. And maybe it's your original values that made you want to do this thing in the first place. And if you lose track of that, you're gonna be like a boat without a rudder, right? I firmly believe that both organizations, employees, and entrepreneurs should be making business decisions based on values. I've seen plenty of the opposite out there, and I've seen it not work, right? I've seen it not work in interpersonal relationships. I've told you about a few of them. I've seen it not work with customers. We see backlash all the time. And these days, right? If your core audience perceives a values collision with you, you could have spent 10 years building something up. And if you expose that disconnect in the wrong way or at the wrong time, you can lose everything in minutes. Everything that you spent years building in minutes. Just ask Roseanne Barr, right? Things happen very, very quickly in 2026. Word gets around very, very quickly. Audiences are also are fickle, and if they think you've done them dirty, or if they think that you're operating in a way that they feel is unethical or that they wouldn't approve of, or if their if their values are all about ensuring a clean future for their children, and they find out that you're embroiled in some kind of scandal that doing nasty environmental stuff and breaking those kinds of laws, you've lost them for good, and they're going to go straight to the internet and tell everybody what you did, right?
Exactly.
I think that's the dark stuff that nobody talks about enough, and it doesn't need to be dark. If we flip that question around, we can really make the conversation focused on the power of values alignment and all of the good things that can come from that. And if we really double down on our values and don't just, and you can't just make it, some bullshit in an employee handbook or anything. You write some nice flowery messaging on the break room wall about how we're all part of a big family or something, right? Whatever it is. If you're not prepared to live those values as a leader and as an organization, not even when it's tough, but especially when it's tough, that's when it's the most important, then everybody's going to see through it. Everyone's going to see through it, and no one's going to believe anything you say after that. And so that's why I think values are really, really important. I see them becoming more important. The younger generation who are entering the workforce, they have maybe never had a harder time. There's maybe never been a generation that's had a harder time entering the workforce than they're having. But they are also more determined to find values fit than any generation before them. I think that's worth paying attention to.
This is a question about starting an entrepreneur journey. So let's say someone has an idea. They are grinding, they are burning the midnight oil just to make sure that works out eventually. What is the moment when they need to retrospect their own idea or their own self that, hey, this is not scaling, this is not working, and this is the moment I need to pivot?
Yes.
So if you can boil down those.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people confuse, well, I know they do, I see it all the time. They confuse busyness with productivity. Okay? They confuse activity with productivity. Like a lot of managers, before COVID, we can't do a remote work policy. That'll never work here. And eventually they had to figure it out. And a lot of them had to kind of eat their own shorts over it and be like, okay, all right, we're surviving. We don't need to have managers constantly making sure that there are warm asses in chairs, across the floor, because that's not where productivity happens. That's not where anything meaningful happens. That's not where meaningful work happens.
Sure.
It's whereas if you empower those people, a lot of talent will gravitate to those opportunities. I got a call a while ago from a shop in downtown Toronto. They wanted me to drive into Toronto 3 days a week, and downtown. And I'm telling you that the compensation definitely wasn't there. And I explained this to this HR rep. I said, but it also tells me that if you're reaching out as far as London to see if someone will go into the office 3 days a week, it tells me that you can't find somebody down there who's willing to do it either. At least not for this salary, right?
Sure. It's more like doing things versus executing a strategy.
Yeah, and a lot of people can't let, it's that thing. I can't let go. If I don't trust people. You know what? If you've hired people that you can't trust without you looking over their shoulder all day long, you've hired the wrong people. Exactly. And that's on you, man. That's on you. It's not on them. So do you think you know how to hire or don't you? That's the only question that remains.
True.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get practical. Of course, we have been talking a lot of practical, but let's say for a founder sitting in Canada right now, what does the actual roadmap look like? Let's say someone in their 20s want to start an entrepreneur journey, wants to found something. What kind of support exists from the provincial, federal government? How do they reach out to VC fundings? How, this is a full jam-packed question, but this is more closer to me as well.
Okay.
How do they show up in events? How do they market initially? Or let's say even if they are doing some market research, where should a person start?
I mean, there are resources in Canada. I think the resources that people are looking for are not necessarily the resources that are available. A lot of people might be looking for funding sources and so on, right? But organizations, whether it's somebody like the BDC or somebody else, right, who's funding something, they want to fund something that is already being demonstrated to work, right? They don't fund ideas, they fund evidence. So I would say, and that can be a little bit of a long road. Everybody wants to sort of cut to the chase, but it's very difficult to be successful that way, I think. So I think it is very important for them to seek out, again, talking to people is really important. Seek out those conversations, whether you're joining Founder Academy with me or whether you are joining a local group of professionals in your space. Maybe they're not going to be your customers, but you can still learn a lot from them, right? Especially if they're a little older, a little more experienced. So I'm a great believer in manufacturing my own luck. We can all do that. We can all do that. We just don't have to, we get thinking these things, we get thinking too formally about these things, right? Whereas some of the best and most insightful conversations that just blew my mind that I've had in my career, I messaged somebody on LinkedIn and I said, hey, I really like what you're doing. I would like to know more about it and I would like to hear more from you. Like, can I take you out for lunch or a coffee or a beer or whatever, right? It's crazy. And everybody thinks, oh, no, they won't have time for me. You'd be surprised. You won't have 100% hit rate on that, but it can be so much easier to find those insights than people think. Little further on down the way, organizations like the BDC can take you on. But again, they want to see that you've gotten up on your own feet for 2 years. They want to see a certain amount of money in the company bank account, right? They want to, there's acceptance criteria before, they're not going to help you continue to burn down your house. But one of the reasons I liked working with them as well, it was a little bit of tough love for the clients, I mean. So the clients would come in and there was absolutely, and some of them came in because it was like the last resort for them. And so there was no room, and the account managers, I loved working with a particular account manager there. There was no room for any of that, well, we've never done it that way thing. He was like, oh, we don't care how you've done it before. That's how you got in trouble. You're here to learn, Mr. Client. and we're here to, kick your ass into doing things properly. You're here to learn, embrace the growth mindset. We've brought in these consultants, listen to what they have to say, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm saying, but you don't have to become a BDC, a signed-on BDC client in order to get those things either. There's all kinds of, I want to say like guerrilla ways you can do it, but non-traditional ways, grassroots ways that you can do it. Join a group, go to events, and when you do join a group and go to events, have a strategic plan, have a sense as to how you're going to stand out, what you're going to talk to people. Don't just ask people if they're interested in buying whatever you've got. Like, go about it a different way. You got to stay in the same vein as innovating a great product or service. You got to stay focused on the problem you're trying to solve. You want to build relationships instead of a product or service, or relationships that might lift a product or service. It's the same thing. You got to talk to those people about what their problems are, what's keeping them up at night. And one thing that came up the other night at Founder Academy, I learned a lot of stuff there too. Very experienced gentleman on the call. He said, as entrepreneurs, we've probably gotten used to wearing a lot of different hats. Oh, I can do this, I can do that. Someone calls you up and say, hey, I know you do websites, but do you also do SEO? Oh, yeah, we do that too. How about email marketing? Yeah, we do that too, right? But leave all of that stuff in the back pocket when you're meeting people when you're trying to find those relationships and you're trying to learn from other people so that you can fail fast, fail quickly, pivot, get to where you're going without burning a lot of gas and without bankrupting your family or just wearing yourself out emotionally, right?
Yes.
Figure out what's keeping the person that you're talking to right now, what's their main problem, and keep that hat on your head. Don't worry about the other hats. It's a conversation for later, maybe. But keep that hat on and keep talking to them about their problem. Keep getting them to talk about their problem. It's Socratic in a way. That was Socrates' thing. He would in debates with people, he would get them to basically agree with him, not by him talking at them, but him getting them to mostly continue to talk about themselves or their perspective.
Right.
And then he would kind of entrap them. I'm not saying we should entrap our customers or clients or anything. I'm just saying the more you get them to talk, the better you can understand them, and the better you can lead them to what is in many cases like a logical outcome. Lead them to the solution that they need. Make that, if they come up with it, sort of, and you're kind of helping them come up with it. I'm not saying let it be their idea or anything, but they are going to initially feel like a higher degree of emotional vibration with you because you have empathized and you've listened and there's been a productive back and forth, and it's not just you with a megaphone in a room. Hey, does anyone want to buy my stuff? Right? Yeah, turn it around. I think, and stay focused on what their one metric that matters. We know that term, right? Or what their main problem is. What's the thing that keeps them up at night? Stay focused on that, provided that's something you can help them with.
Absolutely.
And leave the other hats off the table for the moment.
Isn't that losing an opportunity in terms of not making enough money for that? When you're not taking those jobs that just comes out of naturally, followed by the job that you have done with them.
It's a balance. I'm not saying we all have to pay the bills, right? We all have to pay the bills. I'm in a startup right now. We're doing some stuff for some clients right now, very much in the vein of customer success, because we want to turn those experiences into great stories, because those stories are going to help us sell more than anything we could say with a megaphone, right? The question comes down to how much of time and energy, because time and energy is finite. How much of it do we want to spend on this? And how long are we going to be willing to do this before, it's okay if it's a thing in phases, and that's what we're going to do right now, whether it pays the bills or whether it builds a great client story that we can then put out there. I'm not saying you're wrong, but you do have to be, when you are an entrepreneur, if you're a human Swiss Army knife, you got to say, okay, but are most people just looking for the knife and not the toothpick? Right?
Right.
Be the knife.
Absolutely.
Make sure you're spending enough time being the knife, that you're not diluting your brand, diluting your message, and you're not really well known for any one thing. Then.
Yes.
Yeah.
You earlier mentioned that this majority of the funding companies, either government or the venture capitals, they want to see the evidence. What do you mean by that? Is it like the proven statistics based on the whatever product or service that you're bringing in?
Yeah. Well, it's a couple of things. First of all, I mean, I've seen some people go after money and they don't even have a solid business plan, right? They don't have any financials to put in front of anybody. They don't have any, they don't have a prototype. And I've seen people be successful. We have a client right now who's being enormously successful with a paper prototype. It exists on paper. And not only does it only exist on paper, she has gotten a provincial government in Canada to take notice and say, oh, that's what we need. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to get the Canadian government to do anything differently? I've worked with them. I can't get them to add a column to a spreadsheet, right? But she has, with this paper prototype and this industry experience, and she's coached people through it. She has gotten a ton of feedback on it. So that helps. Then she can build a digital MVP, right? Which is not all the bells and whistles, but an MVP is a minimum viable product that solves the core problem. And then it gets really exciting because then you get users, maybe they're test users, maybe you've invited them, they're in your network, the industry, right? And you get people to test it out and so on. And then hopefully you get adoption, and then you get some feedback and you make it better and you document all of this and you make a good story out of it. That's what investors want to see. And with my students, I had them doing the same thing. I was like, you're going to prototype this in some way and you're going to test it and get feedback. And they had no idea how they were going to do it. And then they found, like, we can do this. But, investors want to see that kind of thing. They want to see something that people already want to use, something that is already working, something that could use a little bit of boost, right? Maybe it just needs more attention. And that's all. And that costs money, right? It can cost money. So that's what they're looking for. It's like somebody buying a business. Who's the last person you met that wants to buy a failing business? Like, I mean, like a cafe or a restaurant or anything, right? Nobody. You got to prove that it works and that it's got legs and that it's got value. And because investors, a lot of them, they want to see a return, right?
Sure.
So you got to document. It's very important to document everything. Document that progress. That's what what I had my students do. What they wanted to do was, I had them chart the whole development of their innovation, product or service from start to finish, and they'd pivot along a number of points, and it would end up being different because they validated it, different than what they originally thought they were going to do. But then they try to sweep all of the pivots away to hide it, to make it look like that was the first idea. We got it right out of the gate, right? They want to take all of that stuff, all of the hard lessons, right? And the valuable things that they learned and went out, the legwork that they did to figure out, oh man, we never thought about that. Or, oh, this isn't really our target audience's priority. It's something a little different. They want something else, right? Those are all very valuable learnings. But in their youthfulness, they'd been conditioned to not, to want to hide their mistakes, right? And I'm like, it's not really a mistake. It's just innovation doesn't go in a straight line. Yep. It's a squiggly mess, right?
Yes.
It's a squiggly mess. And if you came in to pitch something to me in a boardroom meeting and you told me that the idea you were pitching to me was the first thing you came out of the gate with, I'd laugh you right out the 17th floor window. No, because that's not how it works. It's not how it happens. No, you got to leave those things in there because someone like an investor is going to want to see, okay, you have been methodical about this. You've been strategic. You have engaged your audience. You haven't been afraid to pivot. You've really done the hard work of figuring this out. And you're not trying to smoke screen me with the thing where the squiggly line ended up, that was where we were going all along because we're so clever, right? No, I don't think investors, first of all, I don't think they buy it. I don't buy it. I'm not an investor, but I still don't buy it. And that stuff looks good. It doesn't look bad. And so we need to instill this in young people that, fail fast, fail forward, show what you learned. And that looks like an idea that's well thought through, that looks like an idea that's got a future. That looks like something that's worth the commitment.
Absolutely. Entrepreneurs or founders who are going to the pitch competition, how they should be addressing their ideas? Is it like more focusing on storytelling, or
in a pitch competition
in the pitch
situation?
competition settings? Yes.
Yeah, I think
What sells better?
first of all, what sells better is not doing what everybody does. Like, don't follow a formula. Hello, thank you for making this time for us today. This is our team. We're all going to introduce ourselves by first and then last name and state our roles, and then we will. You're like, no, just get into it. Just get into it. Nobody cares. Nobody cares yet. I will say, nobody cares yet. Get right into it. And I got a lot of my students in their pitches doing cold opens. Do you know what a cold open is?
No.
So Saturday Night Live does it every time, right? There's no opening credits or theme song right away. It's just boom, the action starts and you're in the story. And a lot of TV dramas do this too. Boom, action starts. What's going on here? Okay, rising action. There's conflict. There's a problem. There is some kind of catalyst with that problem. Okay, off we go. So in a pitch competition, this would look like, so here's the problem, and we know it's the problem because of A, B, and C, and we talk to X, Y, and Z different people or agencies or user groups or business communities about it, and this is what they had to say. So the problem is validated, right? And now let's get into our solution, right? And explain the benefits of the solution. Again, like I said, don't do the technical stuff first. You're going to lose the whole room, right? Get into the benefit, the value, the pain removal, the painkillerness of what you've done and why people care. Don't let the worst speaker on the team talk too long. And then at the end, say, thank you for your time. This is so and so, so and so, so and so, and we'd love to talk to you further about our innovation. And this is how you can get a hold of us. QR code, right? Whatever. The part of it that the one part of it that a lot of people overlook in pitches is they don't rehearse it enough. They don't rehearse it enough, and I've seen a couple of pitches just go so tragically off the rails, and it often comes down to one person on the team who's just terrified, right? And that person who's terrified, ironically, will spend the most time talking, and they will repeat themselves, and they will go in circles, and they will lose the room. So it's important to practice rehearsing a pitch, record it, watch it yourselves, and like any other product or prototype, consider the pitch a prototype. Show it to some other people, at least people who would understand kind of what you were talking about, and ask them for feedback. How can we improve this pitch? Anyway, but I think just the very act of rehearsing and recording it and reflecting it yourself, well, that's an agile methodology principle, right? There's got to be room for reflection. Okay, product's out the door. Next, no, we got to look back at that cycle, right? That sprint, whatever it is. Okay, what went well, what didn't go well, so that we can be more efficient the next time, right? And a lot of people fail to do that. They fail to take the time to pause and reflect and get on the same page about that, and then put guardrails around the future.
If someone listening or watching this podcast right now, working in a corporate job and wants to get involved into startup world.
Okay. Yeah.
So what are those harsh truths they need to know before even they make that jump, or how they should be prepared themselves financially or
Sure. Got it. They should hope is not a strategy. Abandon all hope. Okay. Forget if you've been for maybe many years in a corporate environment that's felt very safe, it's going to scare the shit out of you, right? You're going to be terrified.
Sure.
It will be, and it should be. It should be scary. David Bowie said, if you're not at least 10% terrified, you probably failed already. Okay, and I think that's very true. So I would say as well, a harsh reality that a lot of people who are considering going an entrepreneurial route instead, they assume that funding is going to be easier to come by than it is. Okay. And so what goes along with that is you might have to work a job you're not crazy about for a while you get your thing off the ground. You might have to, bills got to get paid. Toilets have to keep flushing, right? Lights got to stay on. You might have to drive an Uber part-time while you make this work, unless you've been able to save up, the money that you need. And that isn't most of us. So those are the things that I find people, that they kind of blindside people. And then they spend a lot, and they end up spending a lot of time, oh my God, either stressing or freaking out about these things and figuring out how they're going to fix these things because they didn't have a plan for those things going in. And then they don't have time or energy for the actual thing they're trying to build, right? Because they haven't properly anticipated the friction they're going to encounter, the roadblocks, and so on.
If you want to force every CEO to read one book, what that would be?
Two books that come to mind. One is called The Rebel Cell. And it's actually got like Che Guevara's on the cover. It's got Che Guevara's face on like a Starbucks cup. It's a little creepy, but the point of the book is teaching people how to differentiate themselves, right? How to go against the grain in order to stand out. How to this is very true in a lot of corporate. Oh yeah, we sell that thing too, right? Okay, so what? Like, why should I make the case for me? Don't make me figure it out. Why should I be your customer and not your competitors? And a lot of companies do a really, really bad job at that. So the Rebel Cell really focuses on that. How do we really differentiate ourselves and our message? And again, our brand. It's not your logo. It's not. I mean, these are brand elements. It's not your logo. It's not your tagline. It's it's whatever. It's how you make people feel. How you talk to people. How you can resonate better than the competition with the market that you're trying to address. So the other book is super boring, but it's super skinny. Okay. And it's been around. And in the digital age, I'm honestly thinking, I'll give this. If somebody else wants to run with this, they can have it. It needs like a digital appendix almost, because it's a few decades old now, but it is still very, very true. And it was written by a guy named Donald Murray, who was a journalist and an editor for the Boston Globe. And it is called Writing for Your Readers. And it's a book about journalism. It's a book about helping people be better writers for the audiences that they're trying to connect with. So yeah, he was teaching journalists and stuff, but that doesn't matter. It's totally, what he's talking about in this book is completely agnostic. It is absolutely relevant in terms of market differentiation, right? And I would encourage everybody to read that, because sometimes I feel like I can count on 10 fingers the number of brands that actually do it well, right?
Sure, sure.
And sometimes speaking to people think that actually means speaking or writing, but it can be everything. It can really be a part of that whole, the whole customer. It has to be considered throughout the entire customer experience or the user journey or whatever. There's another book that I actually helped market. I helped market way back when as a consultant. And so I had to read the book.
Yep.
And I was working for a company called Akamai. Nobody knows who they are, but everybody knows who Akamai's clients are. Their clients are like Call of Duty, the Olympics. So they were the biggest streaming backbone in the world in forever. And a lot of their business had to do with games. So they were coming up with some different ideas once more nimble competitors started coming up and saying, oh, we're not quite as fast, but we're way cheaper, right? And they're starting to steal some of that market share. Suddenly they had to sort of make a case for themselves, whereas before they'd been the only option in the room, and they had to sort of, put these messages out there. This is why you should still work with us. We've been doing it longer, and audiences are very fickle. If a cut rate experience interrupts their Call of Duty game or something, they're going to rage quit and chuck that controller, right? It's not good. And they're not going to blame the streaming provider that's running kind of in the background.
Yes.
They're going to blame Xbox or whatever, right? It's true. No, but they will. So this book is called Frictionless. It's by a guy named Nelson Rodriguez. And it's all about identifying and bringing digital. It's about games, but it doesn't have to be about games. So it's a book about bringing games, MMOs, to market and ensuring that, kind of you're making things easy for people to adopt. Stop me when this is sounding familiar, right? Yep. Easy to adopt, easy to get into, and he has this grid in the book, super simple tool. The best tools are the simplest ones. And it's frictions that are avoidable and frictions that are unavoidable. Frictions like you need a login because of security, right? Unavoidable
Yes.
friction versus frictions that are we can reduce, we can work with, they don't need to be in the mix. But identifying these frictions into 4 categories, and suddenly you find out, wow, we're making it harder for people to be our customer than we need to, right? And it's not just about games. It's useful for any digital product. I would honestly say you zoom out from the lessons in a book like that enough. It's about anything. It's about the London majors. You know what they did to boost attendance? They started letting people bring their dogs. They just sat down and had a meeting like, how can we make it easier for people to come to baseball games? Right? It's that conversation.
Right.
And I think it's a very important one for people to have. How do we make this as easy as possible in order to support the best possible experience, reduce attrition, boost adoption, boost retention, boost plays, whatever it is, sessions, right?
True.
Yeah.
The suggestion from one of the book brings me to another question. You mentioned that reducing the price of a service for a service based business, when a new founder comes in the same industry with the same idea,
right?
Either they are providing something extra or something different, something better.
Yeah.
They try to sell their service at a cheaper rate.
Right.
My question is it good or healthy for that business to survive over a longer period of time with a cheaper rate? Or should they do not cut the rates, but they should be competing directly with the competitors who have been in the market, or just serving their services for a higher rate, keeping the rate same, providing something extra on top of it, or providing better should be the strategy. What's your opinion?
I think if your model is such, and your the future projection of your model as well, where you'd like to take it and what does that scalability look like? If that still looks really profitable and like a good idea, maybe, it's a very popular idea to, well, we're going to hire overseas and that'll allow us to sell it for way less or whatever, right? Or we'll use, we're not going to use so many metal pieces in our product. We're going to get more plastic and we're not going to have it made here. We'll have it made overseas. We'll put it together here, kind of thing. And that'll allow us to sell it a lot more cheaply. So that's price. And price is one of the P's in marketing, right? And there's price, and there's product, and there is promotion, which is advertising and marketing, and there is the positioning. Okay. So fundamentally, this comes down to storytelling. Even if your model is good and looks good in the long term, because you're going to sell it for less, however you're doing that, right? You have to still be able to tell a good story that the customer cares about. Not to pick on telecoms again, right? Or anything, but I am, after my nightmare experience with Rogers, okay, I'm now with start.ca, okay? It's cheaper. They don't boast the same numbers as Rogers, but that was weird because my internet went down like 40 times a day. It was fast, but it also went down 40 times a day. So that was the problem, at least for me. I'm not saying that was everybody's experience, but what I cared about, the service was terrible with Rogers. I told you about that terrible experience. I talked to like 60 people, and eventually it came out. The last person I spoke to, they said, well, we can see all these calls, but none of our people wrote anything down. So there's no documentation. I was like, your people didn't do their jobs, and that's your defense. That's what you're trying to use to put me in a headlock about. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is the worst service experience I've ever had in my life. Tried out a different brand. Okay. They don't boast the same numbers in speed, but it's good enough for my purposes. It's fine. I'm not experiencing like buffering events that are making me crazy or lag or anything. And the service is so much better. And they told a better story about the service, and the service continues to tell the story of better service. And I guess as telecoms customers, we can all have different priorities about what we're looking for. But after that nightmare, all I wanted was good service, right?
Absolutely.
That's all I wanted was good service. So if they can sell it more cheaply and still provide better service, well, what's there for me to think about?
Absolutely. Awesome. This is amazing, Adam.
Okay. I feel like I'm talking too much. I'm sorry.
No, it's
Only child. I grew up talking to myself all day, all night.
We came at the end of the podcast, and I always ask this question to every single guest that I have.
Sure.
So, Adam, for you, you have spent years in building businesses, consulting those businesses in order to improve them over the period of time. And you are now in your own entrepreneur journey as well, having your Founders Academy. Kudos to you.
Which I'm not even selling anything.
Absolutely.
I'm not even selling anything. It's free, but I am in a startup that is trying to make money.
Yes.
And it's AI, and that's very relevant if I want to stay relevant in this space and in my career.
Yes.
With 20 years experience, a lot of
Wow.
people don't want to hire me because I just look like too much money, right? And that's so I'm diving back into entrepreneurship. I'm not selling anything with Founder Academy. I just want to help people because that's my brand, and it's not something I do. That's who I am.
Sure.
I will end up having those conversations anyway, even if I don't try to organize it. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So similar to early in my career when I was taking on side projects because, oh, that's cool, that's interesting. I'm not getting to do that, in my day job right now. It's very much the same thing. Oh, I want to talk to these different people because the fun thing about strategy is there's no real template for it. Every business deserves to be treated individually. So it's always a different puzzle to put together. And that's just fun for me, which I hope is a good indicator. I'm actually doing what I love. And sometimes those conversations turn into projects, but I don't actually let people sell anything at Founder Academy. It's cool to talk about what you do, who you are, the kinds of problems you solve, but no digital business card flashing or anything like that.
Absolutely. Earlier on the podcast, we were discussing similar things with James, and one of the things that came out was knowing who you really are without your job title or whatever work that you are doing, and finding that one or few of the tasks that you really enjoy, even if you're not getting paid for that. So I see that in you doing the same thing with Founders Academy. And my question, at this stage in your own life and career, what does a truly successful day look like for you?
What gets me high is knowing that I've helped someone. I've been able to help someone. I've been able to get them away from their own table a little bit, step back from all the food on the plate. They think they have to eat it all and step back and look at it. Like we were talking about, looking at the thing, there's a situation between us and you're seeing one side of it. I'm seeing a different side, right? It's a beach ball. You're seeing two colors. I'm seeing two different colors, right? But we're both right. So a day, when I feel like I've been able to really give someone some insight and really been able to help them think about things a different way, and I can feel the dynamic change. I can feel that light bulb go off over their head. That's the start of it. That's a good day. An even better day is when I loop back to them and I can see that they've taken that feedback and they've made it actionable. They've actually done something with it. And I ask them, how's it going? Oh, you know what? Like getting better prospects in here. They're not balking at the price so much. We had that at Founder Academy. We took 3 sessions and worked on a guy's DJ business. Yes. And the most important part of his business was not the most important part, but the troublesome part was the wedding side, because really high demand, got to get it right. It's a whole different type of money. It's a whole different type of expectation. It's a whole different amount of gear that you got to bring, everything else. And what's more is the more we talked to this guy, we realized, his wife is often an officiant, and he uses music, he doesn't just shut up and play the hits. He uses music to move the event and the people at the event from one stage to the next, or one place to another. So he's sort of he's very much bringing the vision of the wedding to life. He's not the planner, but he executes on the plan in his very unique way. And so he said, okay, you're not just a DJ. Like, why are you continuing to position yourself against other wedding DJs? You're not. You're something else. This is time for, don't try to compete within the category. Redefine the category, right? And that's what he did. I pulled it together for him. Same way we helped clients at the BDC, same way I help clients now. And gave him all the information, had a big report for him and everything, all the things that he should do with his website to make that stand apart and communicate it better. And he came back with the website and I said, so how's it working? He said, yeah, way better. He's doing way better business in that aspect of his business. Way better leads, faster to close, not batting an eyelash at price. They already understand what he's talking about. He doesn't have to spend so much time explaining how he's not just another DJ. Those are wins.
Yes.
Because that's way less time, right? Way less time, better clients. They're going to be better referrals too. That's that post-purchase phase again, right? They're going to be better referrals. They're going to make better stories.
Exactly.
So that's an even better day when I can say, oh, okay, you didn't just get the light bulb. You actually turned the light bulb into work. So but the very best day is when I realized that on both of those previous days, I stuck true to my core values, and looking back at that relationship that I built with that client and realizing that, you know what, it was the values speak that really concretized that relationship. It engendered that trust at the very beginning, because if you can't get somebody to trust you, you can't do business of any kind with them, right? So that's the light bulb, great day. If I get someone to see the light bulb, great day. Even better day if I get them to take action, and the best day ever when I realized, when I can say, yeah, I stuck to my values, I stuck to my guns, I didn't try to manipulate anybody, I told people the truth, I gave them the individual treatment that they deserved. They trusted me, and I respected and honored that trust. And look at it, look at this beautiful outcome. Okay, that's what gets me.
Love
high.
it.
Yeah,
absolutely love it.
Yeah.
That's a wrap on one of the most honest conversation that we have ever had on this show. Adam McNeill came in today and shared what the most startup world needed to hear, and shared some brutal truth and the honest advices if you are in the entrepreneur journey. Links to his Founders Academy is in the description. I would highly recommend you to go and check it out. He hosts his Founders Academy every Tuesday at 6 p.m. based on Eastern time zone. To everyone watching this podcast, drop down a comment from this entire podcast that hit you the hardest. Trust me, I read every single one of them. Until then, keep figuring out, and I'll see you in the next one.